welcome back to L&D Unboxed, the space where we decode what's next in learning, leadership, and performance. I'm your host, Ujjwal, and I bring strategy and heart to the world of human resources. I've had the privilege of working with leaders and enterprises over the last 25 years to unlock human potential and to prepare for the future of work. And now also a strategic advisor with StratBeans, where we design learning solutions for greater business impact. So folks, today the conversation is around unpacking what powers performance. Culture as the new competitive edge, how L&D drives business performance. Not the buzzword kind, but the kind that moves the needle, builds trust, and keeps teams learning faster than the market evolves. We're living in an era, as you know, where talent, technology, and transformation collide. So culture has now moved from being just a buzzword to becoming the ultimate business strategy. So joining us today for this interesting conversation is a leader who has not just designed workspaces, but has architected cultures that perform as well. Arsh Chaudhry, CEO of Space Matrix, which is a global design powerhouse, consistently ranked among the world's top 10. So Arsh has a very rich experience. He has over 25 years of global leadership experience across North America, Europe, and Asia. And under his vision and leadership, Space Matrix, I want to say, has grown over 3x in the past 5 years, becoming a great place to work and a benchmark for client-focused, technology-driven design innovation. He's a thought leader on the future of work, prop tech, and diversity and inclusion, and has also been featured in numerous business fortune forums and global media. Arsh, welcome to L&D Unboxed. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Hi, Ujjwal. Thank you. Thank you for those very kind words and introduction. Delighted to be here. Very interesting topic, something really close to my heart. So looking forward to this conversation.
Wonderful. Yeah, I thought, somebody who's been at the helm of designing workspaces, right, can be an architect for so many things, especially culture. And I've heard so many good things. We read about you, Arsh, in terms of you are a big proponent of building cultures, bringing great cultures to build great places to work, right, for which you've been recognized. So yeah, looking forward to our conversation today. And I think we'll start with, you've been at the helm of Space Matrix now, and you have been, building this business and got it to, amongst the top 10 globally, which speaks a lot. So the big idea that culture is now the new competitive edge. So in your experience, while you've been leading Space Matrix across different continents, how have you seen culture evolve from being a soft concept to a strategic driver of business performance?
So let me start by saying that if there's one lesson that I've learned in leading Space Matrix across different continents, it is that culture is no longer a decor on the wall. It's the very foundation beneath our feet. Years ago, people saw culture as a very soft concept that people lived in the margins of day-to-day business. But today, it's the hardest edge. It's that competitive advantage that cannot be replicated by capital or code or any other unique selling proposition. Culture is how I believe things get done when no one is watching. It's in those daily choices, the trust that you extend, the empathy that you show, the stories that you invite into the room from across the globe. And at Space Matrix, we realized very early on that culture is not what we say in leadership offsites. It's really about what people feel when they log in. It's about what people feel when they walk into the door every morning, or how they connect with colleagues or clients. It animates every conversation, every interaction, every innovation. And in our line of work, workplace design isn't a backdrop. It's a stage where culture gets played out in organizations every day. It gets amplified on a day-to-day basis. The kind of environments that our designers create, they really more than inspire. They empower diverse individuals to feel welcome, to feel valued, to feel engaged. And when we look at purpose in our world, it's not a statement that's pinned to a wall. It's a collective force that shows up in how we support each other, how we view sustainability, and how we make decisions, big or small. So I like to say to our people, and this is what we live for, is that we're united by a conviction to create workplaces that don't just house work, but they energize people and they propel organizations forward. That's how our purpose and our culture become inseparable. They're lived, not talked about. And to be honest with you, culture is tested when conditions change. It's easy
Yeah.
to live a culture when everything is okay, but when conditions change and stress gets created in organizations, that's really where culture gets tested. And the last few years during COVID and post-COVID have really proven that, right? The real test was not about remote working or hybrid policies. It was more about how we sustain ambition, how we create a sense of belonging, and how purpose it gets created when the only constant was uncertainty. So the best of ideas and resilience don't come from process manuals. They come from the culture of inclusion, the culture of listening and empowering talent at every level. So to your point, using culture as a business driver, it's really about how we attract and keep great people in a fiercely competitive market. It's how we stand shoulder to shoulder with our clients, not just aligned on deliverables, but on purpose, on ESG, on wellness, on things that really matter. And most of all, it is our strategic engine for growth, because culture, quite simply, is how we unlock potential in ourselves and our teams, and how we design our spaces for clients. It's our blueprint, really. It's our compass. It's our edge.
Awesome. I mean, you've said so many things, and I think that companies which are really believing in culture being a strategic advantage and driving business growth, I mean that the difference shows, Arsh. We've all worked with numerous organizations, and we've seen differentiators between organizations, and even in my experience across Asia Pacific, I've seen that if the culture is driven from the top and it's just not hanging on the wall, like you're saying, and leaders are really demonstrating and living those values, and that's what culture is all about. There is a difference in performance, in productivity, and growth of the organization. So just and Space Matrix has been named a great place to work. So is there any one unique thing about your culture which you're most proud of, Arsh, which you'd like to share?
Gosh, there are so many, culture of collaboration, a culture of respect to one another, culture of always giving your best. But the one that's closest to my heart is failing upwards.
Okay.
Culture of failing upwards. I really encourage that, and I'm personally a big proponent of that.
Wonderful. That's a new one that I've heard. And coming from the CEO, it makes a lot of difference. So do leaders in your, let's say in your first line or the leadership team, do they kind of, is there any way that you measure something like this? Are these in any form of reviews, or they're just so well imbibed within the business environment that you don't need to really track them?
No, I think it is important to constantly have a feel for the culture of the organization. As organizations grow, as new people come into the organization, culture can get diluted. It is easy to have a culture amongst a smaller team, amongst a close-knit team, but as organizations grow and new people come in from other organizations, there is always a risk of your culture getting diluted, and hence it's very important to make sure that you're constantly measuring what's going on. And to your point, there isn't, one yardstick to measure. It is more conversational. It's making sure you have those skip level meetings. It's making sure you talk to troops on the ground. and get a feel firsthand, roll up your sleeves and get a feel firsthand on how things are happening, and they are really aligned to the direction that you want to take the company, the vision of the company, and the culture that you want to create.
Awesome. Hands-on leaders actually make the best impact, right? Because we all do skip level meetings and things like that, but nothing like hearing it yourself, right, from the troops on the ground.
Yeah.
So great. So Arsh, the you've spoken about the future of work in many forums and prop tech shaping the built environment. How do you see the physical workspace and learning culture complementing each other? I mean, especially in hybrid organizations.
So when we talk about the future of work, it's easy to focus on technology and flexible policy because those are very tangible and easy to touch and feel. But the real story is really how physical spaces and a learning culture are beginning to work lockstep, each of them amplifying the other, especially in hybrid organizations.
Mhm.
So at Space Matrix, I've seen this firsthand. Prop tech and intelligent design aren't just about sensors or smart lighting. They're about creating adaptive environments where employees can learn, they can connect, they can evolve. And hybrid work opens new opportunities if you get the design right. The office is no longer a static destination, if you will. It's a platform for growth. It's a place where people get together to exchange ideas, to build relationships, and to discover new ways of working together. So, a learning culture at its core is about, I would say, curiosity, it's about humility and a shared purpose. But it also needs the right kind of conditions to thrive. So when we design spaces, we want to make sure they break down silos, environments with zones to collaborate, quiet reflection, and also spontaneous connection. And with the right technology that's layered in the walls between digital and physical, they start dissolving. Learning becomes that much more borderless and continuous. So it's almost like a cycle, right? So well-designed spaces spark engagement and experimentation. A strong learning culture fills all of those spaces with energy, with ambition. And in hybrid organizations, this becomes the glue on how distributed teams stay aligned, they stay resilient, and they stay future ready. So our purpose, like you asked, so for us at Space Matrix, our purpose is the heartbeat beneath which all of this works. Our mission isn't just to build offices; it's to create thriving communities at work, to design spaces that help realize their potential, and to ensure that learning and growth and connections are never left to chance. So when physical workspaces and learning culture reinforce one another, organizations don't adapt just to change; they really become stronger with every cycle.
Yeah. And I remember, post-COVID, when a lot of organizations were giving up large spaces because, they wanted to encourage work from home as well and get into the hybrid working environment. The one thing, at least in the industry that I come from, which is advertising, we said that the one thing we really need is a collaboration space. So you give up a lot of the other space and have large collaboration spaces. So even in the US or in Europe, that's what we kept. Because to your point, people coming in just to energize and to collaborate makes so much of a difference to their morale, to their productivity. So yeah, I think that the design of the office has now become so imperative in making sure that collaboration, which was a value with many companies earlier, now is organically created, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's absolutely become the key. So, hybrid is here to stay. The question isn't whether it's one way, either in the office or just work from home. It is hybrid working style for most organizations. But to your point, organizations are beginning to realize the value of coming together physically
Yeah.
to spark those conversations, for teams to come together, to exchange ideas and to collaborate. And that's absolutely the key that drives organizations forward.
Yeah. And we often hear leaders saying culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, not only leaders, but it's a very cliche, which is used very
Yeah.
often. Yeah. But I just differ a little bit in saying that culture also fuels strategy. I mean, it's measurable, right? We talk about, like we were just talking about, you said, whether it is skip level conversations, some people put them in their reviews, and there are some ways where you can track them, you can measure them, right? And they are scalable. Then they also, these, the various aspects of culture, they impact business and the bottom line, which leaders are now seeing. So, from your experience, Arsh, what are some of the tangible business outcomes you've seen at Space Matrix that stem directly, you would attribute them, or they stem directly from the cultural strength and continuous learning culture?
So great question. And you're right, culture isn't a philosophy. It shows up in results. It shows up in client impact and it shows up in bottom line. At Space Matrix, we never really wanted a culture to be something that you feel but you can't measure. So we build a practice around tracking outcomes for ourselves, but also when we deliver to clients. And maybe I can give you a few examples on how we have been able to amplify the culture in a lot of our clients' organization where we deliver work for them. So in spaces where culture is intentionally designed and lived, business outcomes are always accelerated. So we measure the impact that our design has on our customers when we design spaces for them. So we've seen over the last few years, especially post-COVID, visitor experience scores have more than doubled for some of our clients, which has meant a 9 to 10x increase in engagement on over 50% of our projects. Employee engagements have gone up anywhere from 1.2 to 4 times with new environments that spark honest dialogue, collaboration, and innovation. Mobility scores have jumped more than 1.75 times, and people feel freer to choose where they work from, which is very critical, obviously, for hybrid teams.
Yeah.
And satisfaction matrix have grown fivefold in over a third of our projects, especially when environments trigger a sense of purpose, equity, and well-being. And brand connection with employees have risen more than 30% in 7 out of 10 of our projects. So these are, just some examples to give you real metrics on how culture has impacted multiple organizations that we worked with. And the same thing is happening within Space Matrix as well, whether it's in terms of, like you said, us being a great place to work, or in terms of our ability to attract talent, to retain talent, and create an environment where we can help our employees realize their best selves. So continuous learning plays a real role in each of these results. I think culture is one key aspect, but on top of that, you've got to layer learning to make sure that you can always upskill your teams, and they play a pivotal role in each of these results. So we embed our spaces for learning, zones for head down focus, for social inspiration, and even accidental collisions where new ideas are born. So culture is definitely measurable, it is scalable, and it is a force multiplier for any strategy. And if you want business outcomes, you can point to a strong brand, happy employees, greater client retention, faster innovation. But you have to start with culture, you have to build for learning, and then you've got to keep raising the bar.
Absolutely. So well said. So I'm very curious, Arsh. I mean, all the things that you mentioned are an outcome of the spaces, let's say, Space Matrix has designed, right? So these are values which Space Matrix brings to the client. Has there ever been a situation, and I'm sure maybe there are many, where the objective or the brief given to you guys is that, we would like collaboration to increase, we would like employee satisfaction to go up, and we would like, some of the measurables that you have just mentioned, that comes to you from the client and saying, we do want to design a space which helps us increase, let's say, retention in a nutshell?
Yeah, absolutely, Ujjwal. I remember 3 years ago, there was a large insurance company in Singapore, and the CHRO said that we are, I think it was number 131 employer of choice. They were not even on the list of, as the employer of choice. They were really struggling. They had very high employee turnover rates. And they came to us and said one of the issues we've identified is our spaces are very old school. They're very siloed. Teams tend to work not in teams but individual departments.
Mhm.
There's a lot of segregation, and we want to change our culture. So we worked with McKinsey to interview the senior leadership, the CEO, multiple employees to understand what was really going on. And through various interviews, visioning sessions, we quickly realized that, of course, the culture of the organization had to be reset, but real estate would play a key role in making sure that we can help create an environment where the culture can be built upon. So real estate doesn't solve all problems, and design doesn't solve all problems. But if it is done right, then on top of all the HR policies of the organization and how the leadership team sets an organization's visions, goals, mission, and purpose, real estate can help, the design of the space can help foster or manifest each of those policies. So in this particular case, we started with, visioning sessions, did deep interviews, came up with the crux of the problem, redesigned the entire space. They relocated from the building they were into a new space in which was completely redesigned. And they became number 11 as employer of choice in Singapore, and their retention rates improved significantly. So that's one quick example of how the right strategy can certainly help make a huge business impact.
Wow. So 131 to number 11.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a big jump. Yeah. And that's a great example. Yeah. I wish, I mean, and Arsh, that I wish that because employee retention, which is, we do so many things to make sure that you keep the best with you in organizations that, I worked in, you worked in, and, all of us. And there are so many factors which help in doing that. And as if leaders are recognizing that, whether it is the physical space, whether it is the values of the leadership team, whether it is, all of that is the culture together, right?
Yeah.
And that is now having an impact on the bottom line, which earlier was never considered. Culture was like a soft word, right? People would just say that it's either a buzzword or it's a softer version of making sure it's a feel good kind of a factor. But now there's enough and more written, measured, and seen that it really impacts business growth and it impacts employee morale and retention as well.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So before we wrap up, Arsh, one final question. If you could share one piece of advice for leaders who are looking to make culture as their next competitive advantage, what would it be?
Um, well, my one advice would be not to treat culture as an initiative, but as your organization's living rhythm, your underlying source code that animates everything. So quite often people begin to look at things as a quick fix, a program, a campaign, an offsite. But culture isn't static. It is created moment by moment. And the real edge comes from relentlessly, excuse me, designing and redesigning those moments, ensuring that every interaction, every message from the top, from the senior leadership, every policy reinforces what really matters most. When culture, it's not a slogan, when that becomes your compass, you always get more buy-in. You spark a sense of belonging. You can unlock resilience, and you can create an ecosystem where people and ideas can absolutely flourish. So in my experience of leading organizations through change across continents, I've seen that culture gives strategy the wings that it needs to turn disruption into opportunity. And if you want to lead, don't ask what's our culture. Instead, you should be asking how do you or how does the culture live in our choices, in our learning, in the way we show up for work every day. Because I really believe that the future will belong to those organizations who design culture. And if they do that well, they will outlast and they will outperform. I like to say culture isn't the icing, culture is the cake. Get that right, and you will be always successful.
Awesome. So many good takeaways from this conversation, Arsh. I mean, I like that it is what turns disruption into opportunity. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Because in a world that is changing by the minute, I think culture is your speed advantage, right? And I truly believe, like you've said, that it's not a slogan on the wall. I think it's a system that fuels every win, every innovation, every breakthrough, and should be seen, not spoken about. It should be experienced, it should be felt.
It's the operating system of the organization, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love it. It's the cake and not the icing. That's a wonderful statement to end our podcast with. Arsh, thank you very much for joining us today and reminding us that leaders don't just manage culture, great leaders architect it. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for being here and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks.
And for everyone tuning in, make sure to follow L&D Unboxed for conversations that bridge learning, leadership, and real world impact. Until next time, keep learning loud, leading smart, and shaping what's next. This is Ujjwal signing off.